First, we're joined by Wendy Wagner, head of Gowling WLG, Canada's international trade group. Wendy, great to see you, and thanks very much indeed. I know you haven't had much time to look at Mr. Trump's latest pronouncements on these reciprocal tariffs, but the markets seem to be relieved that there's no timeline, and these things could be weeks or months before they kick in.
Yeah, that's right. That's what the recent announcement says, but we don't have any particular date or timeline, so it's really in the air at this point.
There's a lot of confusion about tariffs. I've been reading some of your briefing material here, and I know this may seem obvious, but they're paid by the importer of the good. So if it was a tariff on a Canadian shipment to America, it would be paid by the importer of that good, although in some cases that might itself be a Canadian firm.
That's correct. In many cases, it will be a U.S. firm who's acting as importer into the United States. But sometimes in cross-border transactions, Canadian exporters have helpfully structured the transaction so that they're the importer or non-resident importer into the United States to make it seem like a domestic transaction to the customer.
Oh, I see. The customer feels happier if they think they're getting it from an American source, you mean, or?
No, it's just a matter of taking care of the import clearance process and being liable for any duty and tax on import. So it's just really a facilitation of trade, but it means that the American company will not, in every case, be the importer, although oftentimes they are.
What are you telling clients who are exporters to the United States to do now? What's the urgent action they should be taking?
The first thing to understand is just the impact on the business. Is the particular product subject to the U.S. tariffs, or will it be subject to tariffs when they go into effect? It's not as simple as a question as it may seem on first blush, because the tariffs only apply, for example, to Canadian products, and a Canadian product is defined in the Federal Registry notice when we're talking about the tariffs that have been suspended but were to go into effect. So it's issues like that. Does this tariff apply to your product? Who is liable for paying the tariff? And then you start to look at whether there's anything else that can be done. Although, there isn't a lot that can be done if those tariffs do go into effect.
And there may be opportunities to exempt your goods from the duties, but you need to act promptly.
I think it's a matter of acting promptly is planning for the business impact. There may be some things that can be done in terms of the value for the product that's being sold. Can you shift some of the manufacturing of that product to the U.S. so that what you're exporting to the U.S. doesn't have as high as value, in which case the tariff that applies won't be as high because it's a percentage of the value for duty. But those are not, immediate measures that can be taken, and they do require some planning. But really the first step is to know what's the impact, who's liable to pay, is there something you can negotiate with your customer based on your contracts? Those are some of the immediate issues that have to be understood. And it sounds basic, but we're accustomed to being in an environment where there are no tariffs. So when you think of it from that perspective, a lot of these issues are not self-evident, or traders just haven't thought of them.
Are you finding, so we're looking at some of the key actions here, and as you say, there may be rights and risks under contracts, your existing contracts with vendors and customers. Are your clients tearing their hair out? I mean, some of these people are involved in complex transactions cross-border, are they? Because it's so vague, some of this stuff. Are they stressed or baffled right now? Sorry, go on.
That is a perfect description. Stressed and baffled is exactly how I would describe the situation that our clients are in. It's terribly disruptive. Many of our clients have structured their entire businesses to benefit from CUSMA or USMCA in US parlance. And rightly so, because it was the most efficient thing to do. And it was the way to maximize efficiencies within the supply chain and the business.
Yeah.
But they built their whole supply chain and their whole business and manufacturing around that. And now are being told, well, now that creates a ton of risk for you. And the business you thought was viable is no longer viable.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you think in advanced economies, when you sign a deal, that's it. I mean, people can invest on that basis, but no longer. And another piece of your advice is diversify your customer base. I know that's not a fresh idea, but you say it's increasingly urgent.
It's not a fresh idea at all. It's something this country has been talking about for decades, but it's also not something that's simple to do, and it's not immediate, and it's not short term. But, for long-term business planning, of course, people are looking at that more than ever. And not only in terms of diversifying your business for sales abroad, but what about customers in Canada? And we've seen a really big movement towards Buy Canada and how can we do more trade with each other.
I'm pretty excited. I'm looking out for Canadian goods now. I want to buy stuff made by my neighbors. Wendy, thank you very much indeed, as ever, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.